Okay, everyone, if you just take a second to get yourselves organized and sorted, we're going to start the panel discussion just to keep us on time for lunch. So my name's Katie Molloy. I'm a member of the CESI exec. I was in charge of organizing the conference this year. And we decided, just given Mags's very inspiring keynote talking about CESI 1.0 and CESI 2.0, that we'd invite some distinguished guests along to bring us back together before lunchtime to continue the conversation out into lunchtime and talk a little bit about CESI 3.0. So we're going to look at today the history of the future of CESI. What is the creative and collaborative community that we have here? So what I might do with our panel is you can introduce yourselves. Sorry, should have the roving mic. When it comes to your question, I'll get you to introduce yourselves and just talk a little bit about your work. The inspiration behind this was from Audrey Waters. It was just, where have we been as educators and as technologists? What narratives help us answer questions about the past? What help us shape the future? And as we move into a world where we're increasingly governed by machines and algorithms, it's just to think about the path that we're on, to think about the history of the future of EdTech. So I might leave that up for a second just to give people a second to think about it. Our panelists have the questions in front of them. But thinking about the history of the future of CESI, that given that Mags' talk about CESI 1.0 being postal newsletters that arrived and CESI 2.0 moving to the list and moving online, that CESI 3.0, what does it exactly look like? So the first question I have for our panelists, just to keep on time, is how are we using technology to create and collaborate, given the conference theme? And how has that changed throughout CESI's history? So we have Fred Boss, Sarah Jayne Carey, and Cornelia Connolly that are very eager to speak with you today. Fred?
Hello? Oh, Jesus. Yeah, it's Russian roulette with the microphone down here. Yeah, we're all feeling the stress and strain when more than 10 people walked in. So yeah, Fred Boss, I moderate, I kind of don't, but I do, moderate the Ed Chat, i.e. chat on Monday nights, and there'll be a special this Monday night, quick advertisement, all about this conference, what your takeaways were, that kind of stuff. So if you jump on Twitter, then we'll all be chatting about that, I hope. So the question then, how are we using technology to create and collaborate? I suppose I was part of CESI 2.0 just in the years gone by. I think I've been away from the exec for about 2 or 3 years or so now, but you're never away, as Mags always says. They never let you go. There's always something there. And I think that's part of the thing about CESI as well, that even though you're gone, you're never gone, and you actually don't mind coming back, even for bits and pieces or doing something quickly online for someone or whatever. And that's what the whole idea of creation and collaboration is all about. So you don't get dragged in, you do it because you love it, and it's all to do with the people that you meet and the people that you have met and the talks that you've gone to and the ideas that they've sparked and generated in you that you take back to your own students and that you work in your own classroom. So I think the whole thing about it always comes back to just the people and the kind of the chats you have and the cups of tea and the biscuits and all that kind of stuff. It's not the technology. And I was interested that you started with Audrey Waters' quote, because I think she's very much on the side of, she doesn't trust ed tech, she doesn't trust ed tech companies, she's kind of very wary of the whole lot of them. So she kind of says, ed tech has a history, it's good to know it, but keep your eyes open because there are people in the background who are doing things that maybe aren't for the right reasons or maybe shouldn't be done the way they're being done. So she always has that kind of double-edged sword to her. I just think what I got out of CESI was that, yes, it is all about creation and collaboration. Yeah.
Sarah Jayne Carey, I'm a secondary school teacher in Clondalkin, and it came up on my LinkedIn the other day that I was on the executive in CESI for 5 years, which I couldn't believe actually. But I had been following the list. Somebody told me you should look on this list because I had been made the IT coordinator in my school. Not necessarily the most qualified person to do it, but as happens in most schools, you get landed with these things, and that would be a good place to start. So I started following the list, and then I went to my first conference. And like Fred said, it's all about the relationships, and I walked in, felt completely intimidated by all these amazing people. And then when you chat to them and they go up, you think, oh my God, that's so simple. Why didn't I think of that? Especially the teacher meets that I'd go to, you'd see there'd be primary teacher, secondary, further education, third level. And even though I'm in second level, I learned so much from primary in particular that you can bring to your class and use when you go back. And then all the conferences were the same. You'd pick something. And even if you didn't attend a conference, you'd be talking in the break time to other people that you haven't met before about different things that they've used. And I used to go home with a list of things that I hadn't actually seen their talks, and then you could go in and just use them the next day. So in that way we collaborate. And sometimes people talk about technology, especially nowadays, isolating a lot of people, you know. I was only telling a few people I watched an X-Files there the other night, and I showed it in school because half the class were missing for whatever reason. So there's no point in going on. And it was an X-Files about technology and AI, and there were no people in it at all, only Mulder and Scully. It's really good. You can show it in school, completely suitable, no inappropriate references, so you can write that down. It's on the RT player. And there were no people in it. So technology can isolate in some cases. But what I've always found with the CESI community is that it is actually a community. And it's not a case like there are people there's no hierarchy as such. You literally can meet total strangers and they really want to help you. You know the way sometimes you hear about I'd hear about different subjects, because computer science and coding and technology, they're my subjects. Like, everyone genuinely wants to help, and you can be sitting in the classroom and type on the list, I've just done this, I saw it somewhere, but I've no idea how to log in, or I've no idea how to fix this thing that happened. And within the class or within the day, someone will help you. So it's a proper community. You do collaborate. You can create something amazing. You can make connections here today with people who are working on something that you might want to work on, and you can actually work with them on it and get resources and share tips. And there's loads of people in here who've given me advice, even just on Twitter. I'd say, listen, you mentioned that before, I've never met you, but any chance you can tell me how it works? It's not working for me, you know? And that's what I love about it. It's informal, friendly, and just everyone kind of has the same goal, to help each other and push us all on.
Okay, so I'm Cornelia Connolly, and my background's in computer engineering, but I'm a lecturer in the School of Education at NUI Galway. So I think when I think about CESI 2.0 and even attending the Teach Meet last night and whatever, CESI is the Computers in Education Society of Ireland, and the diversity and range of computing and technology across the disciplines. I think, you know, that's lovely to see. It's not just the IT person in the school. We're here talking, or people are showcasing work about blended learning and accounting, the PE app that Antonio and Deborah are showcasing, history, art. Declan yesterday was talking, I can't see him here at the moment, but the bioinformatics. So the range of technology across the disciplines, that it's not isolated, and I think that's really important, and it's really encouraging within CESI. I think how CESI has influenced policy, the DES policy, the digital learning framework, STEM, all of this, CESI has influenced, and it's all having an effect on our daily lives and in schools and with children, and within as well within initial teacher education providers. So that's really, I think, encouraging, or that's what has changed in CESI 2.0. The fact that CESI is now the recognised subject association in terms of computer science, and that they had representation in terms of creating the computer science curriculum. I think that has changed, or that has been in CESI 2.0. So then, I don't know, will I wait and talk about CESI 3.0?
Yes. We can do that. And I'm really glad I'm asking the questions and not answering them, because I couldn't have answered anything quite as well or with such diversity from such a range of backgrounds. So I very much appreciate that, folks. And this was the next question, you're right, Cornelia, is to touch on where does CESI 3.0 take us? And there's some very valid points there about not only the policy, but the community, the practice, the range of disciplines, that there's so much that you've touched on in those answers that, absolutely, I keep forgetting the microphone, my apologies. I'm used to wandering around. That where does it take us, given that landscape that you've outlined, that's such a diverse community and an informal community, yet at the same time, has informed policy and has created change across Ireland for the better. So please, where does CESI 3.0 take us? It takes us
I'm
into lunchtime,
no
first of all.
visionary or psychic, but kind of thinking. So the learning cycle is longer than the technology cycle, and thinking if we have to encourage and facilitate change and maintain change going forward, what's needed, and it's really about communication and being the evangelists that you all are within your school or within the community, and maintaining that. It's also about kind of increasing the diversity and encouraging diversity and capacity building. It's about developing that culture and that learning environment. And also it's about sharing the resources, sharing the research that you're doing in your school. You mightn't think of it or term it as research, but you know, the different experiments that you try in your classes, sharing that. And I'm going to point out Alison Egan, who is also involved in a project called T-Rex about teacher exchange of research, and I think linking into the Alison's doing it, but linking in with what's out there, the portals, the supports, the other communities that are out there, and and the mailing list, participating in the Monday night chats on Twitter. All of that kind of, I suppose, generates momentum. One of the biggest things I think going forward that we have to ensure is about diversity and inclusion, and ensuring that computer science is for everyone. And computer science, computational thinking, coding, like there's so many terms that are kind of interrelated, but that we have to, you know, kind of ensure that all classes, all schools, all children are introduced to it. And even going back to what Mags was saying and talking about creativity, like creativity is really augmented by computational thinking and facilitated by it. So encouraging that, not at the detriment of numeracy and literacy or anything, but to combine the three going forward. Just when I'm thinking, sorry, I'm jumping from thoughts, but thinking about the T-Rex platform, and one of the speakers that we're hosting a webinar in mid-March about design-based research, and one of the key speaker on the platform is talking about the zone of proximal implementation. So whatever you're doing in your classroom, what you're presenting at the Teach Meets, that is beneficial to another teacher in another school, and sharing that information, I think, is how we have to kind of facilitate that more and encourage it more, or maintain that flow. That's enough of me. Sorry.
I think really for the future, CESI was always about the three sectors, or the four sectors really, plus maybe industry. So I think in school anyway, and like all the teachers here would agree, a lot of your time is spent on relationships and transition, like the transition between primary and secondary. As a secondary teacher, we spend a lot of time dealing with that. I know the universities and third level and further ed spend a lot of time dealing with the transition between secondary and those sectors. And I think the fact that CESI has primary schools, secondary schools, third level, further ed, and all the universities talking to each other in the same room, at the same conference, all pushing for the same thing, I think that's quite unique. And as a teacher, and someone with my own children, you know, I see my kids coming home. I'm not going to name him now, but my daughter's new primary teacher's in the room. I was delighted to see that. And she came home this year. She's doing her homework on Khan Academy. They're using the We Do Lego robots in school. You know, and they've done loads of tech before, but this is the first time I've seen it brought home to my own house from the primary sector, you know. And so she's teaching me things that I can now use in secondary school. So that's my 10-year-old daughter learning from a primary teacher. I think we can learn so much from all the sectors, and even talking to the different representatives from different universities about the courses that are available and the stuff going on. I think we need to keep that. Although CESI is the official Computer Science Teachers Association of Ireland, and this year, the year that's in it, it is all about computer science and coding, and you can feel that, and it's really exciting. And, you know, people long before me have pushed for it. It's brilliant. But we are unique in that we have all this other stuff going on, and I think I'd love to keep that, and I think the organisation really wants to keep that. So if there are any teachers out there now who have come and seen something that they would like to present, and it doesn't have to be rocket science, although I know we have rocket scientists here and that's fabulous, you know, like people gain so much from the little small things, and it just kind of starts the spark. And that's how I started, brought me into it. I think Trevor from the local boys' school, my equivalent, told me about CESI, and that's how I went to the first conference. And then somebody else said you should come to a teach meet, and it just exploded from there. But you should really, really think about get more involved and presenting your work, because you're doing stuff in class, and you know from the conversations, people are doing stuff in class that just blows you away. And you hear about it, you overhear it, you're earwigging as you go around, and I think, I'm going to use that. What's that person's name again? Who did that? So I think that's something that we should really aim to try and keep for CESI and expand it even more, because now with technology, it's much easier for us to collaborate than it was in the past. So I think to keep that essence is very important.
Yeah, I don't know, I was just thinking of the idea of creativity and things coming into their own time and that, and just thinking about the people who kind of make glue, and they're there spending ages making the perfect glue, and then someone came up with a glue that didn't work, and then they came up with my notes on a post-it, and then the post-its were born. So that's my technology for what we're talking about, because I have everything scribbled down there. But what you're getting there is the idea that CESI has been around for so long and it hadn't really had a subject tied to it. So you've got this whole bottom of the iceberg thing with a load of great stuff happening, and then there's a cap of a subject on the top. And like Sarah Jayne says, I wouldn't like to see the cap on the top being the only thing anymore, because everything that's underneath, all the hidden stuff, shouldn't be the hidden stuff. It should be the thing that kind of makes CESI stand out. And just by the fact that you're here today, being part of that, you are actually helping to make it stand out. I think when we're thinking about Web 3.0 and we're thinking about CESI 3.0, it's all about semantic webs and the information hidden underneath the layer. So it's back to this iceberg kind of thing. And the idea that things are always in flux. And I think CESI has dealt with that really well over the years, because someone will come along with the latest gadget, the latest bits and pieces, and CESI might grab it, you know, a nice trial one from Microsoft, or trial one from this or from that, or the socks from Google. Did they actually work? They do. So they'll try all these, and these are just games and things to try, but when you try them in class, they're a little bit more serious, and the kids kind of can say, oh yeah, actually, it might be a pair of socks, but I can see how that might work then for my tie for school in the morning. So I can kind of say, right, where is it? Clap my hands and the light goes off somewhere in the corner. I find my tie. So, you know, all these things, and then kids come back to school and say, I now have a project that I think I can do, or I want to try this out or that out. So everything grows from everything else. So I think that whole idea of being able to connect people and technology is what's the most important thing. And that's kind of what I got out of CESI when I started, and that's kind of what keeps me coming back.
Thank you, Fred. And just because we're coming up to lunchtime and we're actually back on track for time, what I'm going to suggest, I'm going to end on a few thoughts here, and I will never remember to talk into the microphone, my apologies, is just to end kind of somewhat similar to what Fred was saying there, just about the tinkering with technology and where things are going. When Mags was planning her keynote and was in touch with me, I was busy planning this panel session and thinking about what is it we want our students to be able to do? And we both came out that we were thinking about Papert very closely. And just in terms of JCT coding and in terms of Leaving Cert Computer Science, is thinking about what our students are actually doing with the technology. So as to leave on kind of a final thought from Papert, that in my vision, the child programs the computer, and in doing so, both acquires a sense of mastery over a piece of the most modern and powerful technology, and establishes an intense contact with some of the deepest ideas from science, from mathematics, and from the art of intellectual model building. That students in charge of the technology, rather than being, as Audrey Waters would say, the pigeons, being conditioned to react to the technology, is putting students first in that technology. And I think the diversity of what the panel has kind of covered as far as what the CESI community is just really useful, just looking at that room, looking at the different disciplines, the different sectors that we know here today, that everyone's a passionate educator that's coming to this community to feel that sense of community and for that help. But also because they care very deeply about education and care very deeply about their students. And I think that's a testament to looking around a very full room full of smiling faces, and from a panel that's so casually talking about these things, because they're things that we are intrinsically thinking about constantly, that they're part of what we do. We are educators. So what I was intending to do if we had enough time was to do a bit of a Q&A. But what I'd actually like to do, because we're just outside where lunch will be served, just in the canteen, where we've all been hanging out most of the day, is to send you forward and say, continue this conversation over lunch, because you've learned a lot today, you still have a lot left to learn. These conversations are ongoing. They're ongoing on Monday night's Ed Chat. They're ongoing on the CESI list. So please feel free to continue that conversation and maybe share afterwards with us what your vision of CESI 3.0 is. And frankly, you are CESI 3.0, so thank you.